It's your boy Radiant, and we're back with another story. So I know normally I hate most people would explain why they've been gone so long, but the long short of it was I've been kind of busy, and I'm the kind of person whose entire life is a roller coaster. I've actually been doing very well for myself today, so we're going to just try and ease back into the spooky season with an RPG horror story. And I've been waiting to do this one for a while. There's a lot of stories out there that I love to talk about, and this one is well known among the red. We are covering the infamous Craig Saga. If you don't know who Craig is, don't worry, you soon will. Let's dive into the story. This story is from a few years back while I studied at university. My gaming group consists of a mix of study mates and older friends, all aged in their early to mid 20s. The group was great and still keeps together nowadays, about 8 years there. Well, except for one guy, a classic that guy with a particular lack of self-awareness. This is the story about the many red flags he raised and had him ultimately leaving the campaign. The first big campaign we played together used the Anima Beyond Fantasy system, a niche and kind of obscure Spanish TTRPG that is basically high fantasy on super cocaine. Highly recommended, we still play it. I was the SD, I assume that means storyteller, and had 4 players. Charlie played a surprisingly deep barbarian from the far north with a penchant of eating raw birds, occasional cannibalism, and hacking people to pieces with axes. The second player, Jacob, rolled a hardcore survivalist and martial artist from the jungle country that acted as the grown-up in the group. Hi, group dad. Jacob was probably the greatest player in the campaign, and his character went through an amazing evolution. But that's a story for another time, and definitely another sub-forum. RPG glory stories? Thirdly was Jake that played a circus runaway wizard psychic. Yes, this is a thing, and it is awesome. That accidentally killed himself in an arcade mishap. Jake eventually re-rolled a crazy elven wizard and was great. Anyway, the fourth player was Craig, and the main character of the story. He definitely likes to think so. He rolled an upbeat chi-wielding Eastern monk that dripped in shonen protagonist material. Oh, I think his catchphrase was screaming, "Springtime of youth," at the top of his lungs, doing an obnoxious fist pump. Hey, I like fist pumps. Most of the time, Craig's character was fine, but along the road, Craig and his characters started showing their true selves, much to the horror of the gaming group. The campaign, in a typical fantasy fashion, the players started being sold as slaves together in some remote shithole of the world.
I didn't know that was considered standard RPG favor. I just have people meet in a tavern.
I think I even warned my players that an Elder Scrolls opening was coming. Oh, okay, there we go. So they should prepare themselves for starting at absolute zero. The 4 players were captured along with 2 NPCs that would become integral to the overarching plot. A former old priest and a young sorceress. Now, this was the first session of the campaign, and from what I know now, the time the first red flame came up. Said sorceress was named Ray. Rai? We're gonna go with Ray. From an eastern land described in the setting as not Japan during the feudal era with magic and katanas everywhere.
Yeah, that's a red flag if I ever heard of one.
As a result of her upbringing, again inspired by the time period that the eastern country emulated, she was very submissive, polite, and timid. Immediately after I described her, Craig had this strange look on his face, and he immediately had his character scoot over to try helping her more or less, ignoring the other fellow captives.
The crocodile stalks its prey.
The group went on loads of adventures across the seas. Oh, sorry. Anyway, the group had managed to overthrow the crew of the slave ships and took it for themselves. They went on lots of adventures across the seas in their stolen slaver ship, find the big bad evil guy and chthonic whores left and right. Things were going fine, and we had loads of fun. With time, characters' affection for Ray kept growing and eventually became mutual romance, and all that was a natural part of the campaign by design, as it encouraged proper role playing and character growth. I would say we handled it quite well compared to all the horror stories I have read here. Ray and Craig's character became intimate, which made Craig exceptionally happy. In between games, he wrote all these kind. Sorry, OP has some messy spelling, which throws off my ADD. In between games, he wrote all kinds of novels about his character's affection for Ray and sent them to me. Unsuspecting of things to come, I graciously applauded his dedication to the game. So here's my first major weigh in. Yeah, it's definitely fine if your character or your players gets excited for possibilities. Just as a random example, in a way of how this can play out just fine, I remember when I was very young in my RPG days. Well, not exactly, but a few years back, I had a character known as Torin the Terrible, a Dragonborn fighter. He was technically an NPC from my main character's backstory. It's complicated, but the long story short of it was, he was basically an NPC that was hanging around the party house. And one of the player characters was another Dragonborn, namely a woman, and I had asked if they would in any way be interested in said character. I gave them the description and basically said, is this something your character would like? They did give me a, I'll have to think about it, and I just left it at that. I didn't want to push any boundaries, but it's sometimes an interesting way to get a look at certain appearances. As it was, I ended up describing the Dragonborn fighter NPC as just a guy who hung around their castle that they inherited, because of course the heroes inherit a castle after they save the world. And he just hung around in the equivalent of jeans and a t-shirt. Not gonna complain, because it was a fun-ish campaign. There are a few issues, but we're talking about how Craig messed up. Alright, so the long short of it is, it's one thing if you're willing to write your own story in this game that's about telling your own stories. The main issue is, you have to see what you're enabling. I've had players who will just enable things as a joke, but sometimes I have to shut certain trains of thought down. Namely, if you see anything that can be associated with more problematic behavior. For example, if those little novelettes of his had him doubling down on a possessive nature of the NPC, that would be a problem. And we're probably going to see that coming out later. Alright, let's roll that post. At one point, Ray was separated from the group for an extended amount of time. Craig was expectedly upset with this. He became increasingly quiet between sessions and did all sorts of odd things in character. On the top of my head, I remember him once yelling out of character at another player that he wanted to carry an unconscious, nubile girl instead of him. Jake, which played said character, just went, "Sure, whatever, dude," and handed the unconscious girl to Craig. It was as weird and as awkward as it sounds. Why was there a naked girl in the first place? Eventually, Ray came back to the group and had undergone quite a radical transformation. For reasons I will not go into here, her personality, formerly submissive and timid, had become sarcastic, extrovert, and at times quite abrasive. This did not sit well with Craig, and he was notably upset by this evolution. After this point, two parallel stories unfolded, one in character and another out of character. In character, Ray and Craig's characters just grew apart. Craig's character ignored Ray and their relationship just fizzled out by lack of mutual interest. Such things happen, that's life. The more interesting story is how Craig handled it out of character. he became increasingly antagonistic towards Ray, yawned, rolled his eyes, and making remarks whenever she did or said anything. Oh no. I remember him saying, "Can't she just shut the fuck up?" Out of character at one point. The group tried to ignore this strange, incelly behavior the best they could. The strangeness became even more apparent since the problem with Ray's transformation was limited only to Craig. The other players found Ray amusing, funny, and a bit sad at the same time. In other words, her inclusion in the story was still appreciated, and they thought she was a great character. But for Craig, his love turned into bitter hatred for his lost waifu. Of course, as soon as the woman character doesn't fit his platonic ideal, he wants nothing to do with her. Anyone else get that vibe of, "Why? I was just being so nice to her, and now she's treating me like crap." Treating you like crap meaning she doesn't give you sex whenever she wants. Hey, we're demonetized. How about that? Anyways, let's keep going and hearing how gross this is. I'm gonna need a toothbrush after this story. After some time, he decided to switch characters in an effort to cut away the no doubt strange concoctions of feelings he was having about Ray. Still, even with the new character on the table, he could not bear the sight of her. His hatred doubled when he found out that Ray had moved on from Craig's shonen hero character that had also physically left the group and became involved with Jake's crazy elven wizard. Well, yeah, you broke up, you dummy. Out of character, Craig was incredibly angry and upset about this. We, as in Craig, myself, spent God knowing how many hours talking about the issue, trying to find some way to solve it. Or at least I try with my non-existent degree in psychology. Yeah, I've been there. I've been the unlicensed therapist too. It felt like I was giving actual relationship advice to Craig, which was incredibly bizarre and a bit distressing at the same time. Oh boy. Yeah, this is 5 flavors of weird when what is clearly supposed to be acting goes too far. Roll post. The new character did not last long. Craig decided to leave the group for personal reasons and not having enough time to roleplay. After leaving the campaign, he told me that he felt personally betrayed, especially for me giving away Ray to Jake. At this point, I was pretty fed up with his obsessive rants, but I didn't want to antagonize him any more than necessary. Yeah, don't poke that bear. It's on cocaine. I just kind of said that I was sorry that things turned out the way they did, but that one should be careful to separate player from character. Let's just say Craig didn't qualify for the national team of separating persona from person. I sometimes do it too. To point out, there was no obstacle for Craig to continue pursuing Ray in her new and improved version. I had half expected him to get to know the new her, but I think he felt that it was too much of a chore, as he said he had already won her and didn't want to bother doing it again. But I digress. I can't really say what was going on inside his head. Oh look, the entitled guy gets even more entitled. Yeah, I don't appreciate this whole, well, I already put in the work to earn her affections. I've never been in a long-term relationship, but I've seen enough to know at this point that it's not a one-and-done transaction. You don't just declare your love the first time and then you don't have to maintain it. A relationship, like everything else in life, is work. You have to put in that time for people to care about it. And when we change, you need to have a solid foundation with that person so that you two can handle those changes together. It is possible that sometimes you might be in a state where your persona alters. I myself have quite a few negative personality traits. And there is a chance, although unlikely, that I could be in a relationship with someone who finds some of those traits appealing. For example, I do tend to apologize excessively, and I seem a bit timid at times because of it, because I'm nervous I'm going to screw up. If I'm in a relationship with someone and that person makes these personality traits more attractive, but I grow more confident as I put more work on myself, there's a chance that the person they fell in love with is gone. They might see that as a bit of a betrayal, but I'm not gonna stop my personal growth. I'm just gonna hope that they can fall in love with the new me, because that is hopefully a better me. But I'm digressing here, and we're almost done. We got 2 parts more to narrate, and I'm hoping I can keep this relatively entertaining. So let's just roll the post. Anyways, that was a long-winded story about my problematic player Craig leaving the campaign, which lasted for about another 2 years before concluding in his absence. There are more stories about Craig being that guy, his ultimate meltdown that ended in him quitting the group and renouncing his friendship, his own bizarre campaigns, and many other weird tears which we will get into soon. Teal Deer, player becomes smitten by an NPC and freaks out when said NPC undergoes radical personality changes. Spirals into madness as player obsesses over NPC out of character and eventually leaves the campaign, feeling personally betrayed by the loss of his waifu. Okie dokie. So, can we learn anything? Well, aside from don't ever do that, there's a few things. To DM, I would say players do sometimes get into their head that certain things are the most fun. And I'm not knocking that. I've had games where sometimes some of my character's tactics doesn't sell as well. I've had scoundrels who try and con the party only to be met with immediate violence, even though I had assumed it had been made clear that you can't just threaten to kill anyone who doesn't like you. It's sort of a natural state for a player to want to just get what they want out of the game. It's a natural state, and all you can do as a DM is try to find a fun way to play around it. Heck, to go back to my own personal example, I had a scoundrel who could do something that the party wanted. His response was, "What are you gonna give me for it?" Everyone tries to intimidate him, and I had another NPC aid in on the intimidation, which made it even funnier. At least I assume that's how the players reacted, since it was an unusual circumstance. Now, Craig wanting his perfect waifu, yeah, I'd say it depends on the party. If most of the party seems to be fine with this behavior, maybe you didn't have to change the personality, but that's only a maybe. Craig is very much an entitled person, so I'm not going to be giving him the benefit of the doubt here. He probably could have been less creepy, and the fact that he got so hostile, I would have shut him down, probably. However, we will be covering those parts of the saga next time on this thing that I'm doing. And thank you all for watching. I hope you all tune in later for part 2 and 3. It might be a little longer, but I just want to get this video out in time for spooky season. I hope you all have a great Halloween, and remember to subscribe.